Where you fight, anger is your biggest tool. Fighting angry, that drains you twice as fast. Yeah, the guy in the ring is your enemy, but if all you're trying to do is kill him, then you expose yourself. You leave yourself vulnerable. Gotta protect yourself. Make his mistakes be his destruction.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Bundy. Bundy here. You there. The 2025 playoffs are here. I'm here to discuss round one between Guylander at 7-6-1 versus Ewok Rape at 8-6, and Cult of Jolt, horrible name, at 7-7 versus the 9-5 Joelicus Maximus. Let's start with Pedro versus Joe. When was the last time Pedro made the playoffs? In 2022, with a record of 7-6-1, Pedro made it all the way to the championship game, losing to Andy that year, who also had a record of 7-6-1. Joe, 2023, with a record of 6-8, he was eliminated in the very first round. Now, what's most important than records or their matchups versus one another, in this league, what's more important than the numbers are what people say about you when you lose. Because when you lose, you tend to reinforce certain patterns. If Pedro loses, he reinforces the pattern of being a middle-of-the-road manager. 5 to 7 wins a year. Maybe he fights for his fantasy life the last 2 weeks of the season. Mediocre. He did overcome his blunder of 2018, which is on the table. It's dissipated a bit because he showed up in the championship in 2022. That counts. But it has to be brought up, just like we bring up Chimera incidents, which Pedro was also connected to, and whatever Ed does. It's always on the table. But if he loses, that's what we'll say about him. If Joe loses, he's the poster boy for losing. The champion that everybody wants to see but never shows up. The bottom of the league, historically speaking, of course. The records between these teams would lead you to believe that maybe Joelicus Maximus has the advantage. But after the trading this year, Pedro essentially bought himself a better team. That's exactly what he did. Most of the players on his team are products of trade, so he completely flipped over his entire inventory, and he has a better team than what he started with. Now, looking at Pedro's lineup for round one, I mean, you'll notice that he has Brock Purdy in at quarterback, who has a matchup with the Tennessee Titans, projected to get 18 points. From the optics, you'd look at it and say, well, is he pulling an Andy because he has his better players on the bench, has the mediocre players in his active slots? But Dak Prescott, whom he got off of a trade, and CeeDee Lamb are both facing the Vikings. That's a tough matchup. It's a very tough spot for Pedro. Overall, Pedro's team, Pedro himself was so effective with trading that he will legitimately have 3 to 4 players, maybe 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers on his bench that he can't touch. No matter what, he's just going to have to hold that. Is that an advantage at this point in the season? We'd all like to have a number of playable players, of really good players. But what if you're faced with having to bench 3 or 4 valuable players in the playoffs? It's one thing to do it in the season where you can come back next week and get a victory, but now it's do or die, Pedro. Now this is for it all. This is for the money. This is for the belt. I think he will start Brock Purdy because it's the safe start. Jaylen Warren, Ashton Genty, all these players can be started. He's not going to start Brian Thomas. If Pedro starts Brian Thomas, I'd be very surprised. RJ Harvey, of course, he could get a 14 or he could get a 3. You never know. He's probably going to start Chase Brown, and the Cowboys defense, that's a definite. And why did Andy drop Courtland Sutton? Over on Joe's side, I'm very pleased to see that he is starting a Marcus Mariota. It warms my heart to see anyone start a Washington Commanders player. Did the injury to Daniel Jones hurt Joe, or is this a blessing in disguise? Well, Daniel Jones, after his Week 11 bye, came back in Week 12 with 16 points against the Kansas City Chiefs. And in Week 13 against Houston, 16 points as well. And then he got hurt last week, Week 14 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, those are very tough matchups. Before that, Daniel Jones was, 21 points, 13 points. He was never really elite. He was just solid and had, 1 or 2 big performances. Now, Marcus Mariota has the ability to get you 260 yards, maybe a touchdown, and throw on 5 more points on the top with 50 rushing yards. So I believe that Marcus Mariota would be ranked just a little bit higher than Daniel Jones, considering the matchup this week against the Seattle Seahawks. So this was a blessing in disguise for Joe, but what was not a blessing in disguise was the injury to Drake London, which is going to be very important this week. Because when you look at Joe's team, obviously he has Bijan Robinson, who's auditioning for Team Bundy, scored 21 points. Amazing. He's got DeAndre Swift, who can easily throw in about 10 to 13 points. But that wide receiver core, Jameson Williams, Khalil Shakir, Devontae Adams, strong play, who's going to eat versus the Detroit Lions. But what's Jameson Williams going to do? Does he have 20 points in him? Khalil Shakir. Maybe they're due for points. Maybe they're due for an outburst. But Joe's wide receiver core is subpar in comparison to Pedro's. I mean, even Pedro's ability to play Tet McMillan, who he got from Team Bundy, his ability to play Tet McMillan, I think, overshadows whatever Khalil Shakir could do, or his ability to play Jalen Waddle. It's just, he's got better players on the back end. He's got better players up front as far as the wide receiver core goes, and running backs as well. The way I see this matchup going is, I think it's going to be very one-sided. I think Pedro is going to maybe score somewhere in the hundreds, maybe the early hundreds, and I don't think Joe's going to make it out of the 80s. I don't know. I don't trust his wide receivers. Maybe Jameson Williams goes off and Khalil Shakir does nothing. Who knows what the weather situations are? It's snowing here in New York City, so we don't know what's happening on the East Coast with some of these games, and I think that favors Pedro, who has much more upside on his team, a much better team now that he made all those trades. I think by the end of Monday, and Pedro even has the benefit of having players on Monday. He has the benefit of possibly playing Dak Prescott at 8 p.m., though he's probably not going to do that. He's just got the final say. He's going to have the final say in this thing with Jaylen Warren on Monday night. I think Colt of Jolt is going to advance to the second round of the fantasy playoffs. I'm not going to pick a score. What I will say is early hundreds versus late 80s. That's my prediction. So let's move on to the rivalry between Ewok Rape and Guylander. The last time that Guylander got into the playoffs. It was 2023. He had a record of 11-2-1, and he completed his championship, beating Ewok Rape in that year. The last time that Eric made the playoffs, 2024. With a record of 9-5, he was eliminated in the second round by Team Body. That was awesome. Anyway, what will be said about Eric if he loses to Andy? Well, if Eric loses, he will once again go down at the hands of Andy. As I just told you, he lost to Andy in 2023, and I haven't dug back and looked at the papers enough. And by the way, shout out to the commish for making those statistics available for me, since I lost, certain information out of my account. I lost those years, so shout out to him. I haven't dug into the papers enough, but Andy has eliminated Eric several times over his reign. So if he loses to Andy, every time we think of Andy's success, we'll associate it to Eric's rotted corpse, just laying there somewhere in the vicinity. He's 5 years removed from his championship, but losing to Andy hurts more than losing this game. You understand? Because it's Andy. If Andy loses, I'm sad to say this, Andy doesn't really lose anything. We don't really say anything negative about Andy other than the fact that he's Andy. But Andy's won 4 championships over the past bulk of however many years. He's already done enough. If he's eliminated, he just goes and fucks off. He didn't make the playoffs last year, and Andy just starts to, these are the seeds of what the next 15 years will be for Andy if he's eliminated. He'll once again start off as a team that does nothing, kind of like Pedro was. That's what Andy was. Andy was Pedro, and being eliminated gets him on that route to becoming Pedro once again. Getting to the matchups now. Justin Jefferson. Holy shit. Never before has a number one receiver been so hindered by his own starting quarterbacks without an injury. Without an injury whatsoever. Justin Jefferson has played each and every game of this season, and man, just looking at his statistics, he just looks like some guy that you get off the waiver wire and you get him on the waiver wire, you drop him again, and then maybe he goes off for 1 week. Justin Jefferson hasn't scored more than 12 points this season, 2 touchdowns. So one would think against the Dallas Cowboys at 8 p.m., maybe there's a chance. Maybe there is a chance that Justin Jefferson can get in for a touchdown. Andy needs it because his supporting cast at wide receiver is Juwan Jennings. And let's see who he has on the bench. Ladd McConkey. He's probably not going to start. One thing about Andy is once he does the whole lineup thing, he pretty much, when he loads the lineup, this is the lineup. This is the lineup that he's inserting. Whatever Marvin Harrison could do or would do has been overshadowed by Michael Wilson. Just unbelievable numbers since week 11, 18, 11, 3, 26 points last week. This week going against the Houston Texans, who have a pattern of shutting people down. So technically Andy's best receiver going against the toughest matchup, the toughest defensive matchup this week. And Andy has the best defense in fantasy, which is the Seahawks. Chris Rodriguez is due to start here for Andy, projected to get 11 points. And I love my Washington Commanders, but that's a gamble. That is a gamble for Andy. His alternative is starting Aaron Jones, but that's the thing about the Minnesota offense. The Minnesota offense can't move the ball down the field to get anybody any significant fantasy points. It's an even bigger gamble for Andy to start 2 Minnesota Vikings. So I understand putting Aaron Jones on the bench even at 9 projected points. It's just going to be so fucking annoying to see him just fucking run into the end zone and get 1 fucking touchdown. It's upsetting. This time of year is very stressful on all of us. So I understand what you guys are going through. I've been here before, believe it or not. It's happened before. Jalen Hurts. You got to start Jalen Hurts. What did he get you? He got you like a -1. You got Wentzed last Andy officially got Wentzed. We're not going to call it a Hurtsing, or he didn't get Hurts, because Jalen Hurts is obviously elite. You start Jalen Hurts. He's against the he's against the Raiders, so you have the utmost confidence starting him. And that's about it for Andy's team. Over to Ewok Rape, who's got Devon Achane Monday night, that very comfortable last word, that Monday night play from your elite running back. Travis Etienne, who I believe Eric had on the bench last week, went off, for Travis Etienne, scoring 19 points. He's been pretty consistent the whole year. Amon St. Brown. Now, I told Eric, this was around the time that Malik Neighbors got injured. I told Eric that when I was in the draft, my first thought was, okay, I want a wide receiver. I'm going to do things differently this year. I'm probably not going to get the running backs that I would like to get. Those were like a specific 3 in my slot. So I'm going to get an elite wide receiver. When Paul took Puka Nacua, I said, all right, Puka was my first choice. I'm not getting Puka. Then it was between St. Brown and Malik Neighbors. And even when St. Brown got hurt a couple weeks ago, I was like, he's hurt. But he fucking came back the next week. That's how it works for you guys. Your guys get just a little dinged up, but they're fine. Puka Nacua gets hurt, but all of a sudden he turns up in the game like a few plays later, and my players just die. So Amon St. Brown, who I had last year, reminds me of what could have been this season. Maybe I would have gotten 2 extra wins. That's what I'm possibly looking at here. Amon St. Brown going against the Rams, and this is the interesting dynamic with these two, other than the fact that they have a podcast together, is that Jalen Hurts has recently been hooking up with A.J. Brown. They've been seen around town canoodling with each other, making out. They've been hooking up since week 12, 17 points for A.J. Brown. What was that? 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, week 13 with 25 points. And just last week with 10 points. All yardage, 100 yards for A.J. Brown. So A.J. Brown is back to being the biggest cog in the Philadelphia Eagles offense. Because it doesn't seem like, how Saquon has fallen off. Do you remember at the beginning of the season when we were talking about number 1 running backs, and I told Paul that Bijan over Saquon, and Paul was like, no. Well, how did that age, Paul? That aged like milk. I'm a little pissed off at Paul because he's in the playoffs and I'm not in the playoffs. It's okay. It's fine. I'll be okay, guys. I'll be okay. As far as Eric's bench, Trey McBride on the bench for now. He's the number 1 tight end, but he's going against the Houston Texans. And an injury here to T. Higgins, who definitely would have been playing probably in the spot of either Monangai or Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker, who he acquired in a trade with Team Bundy. Kenneth Walker's had 2 good games since he's been on Eric's team, so that's worked out for him, and Charbonnet did what he did for me. Patrick Mahomes, he's ready to start. So here's what I think. Much like the other matchup, the wide receiver room for the underdog here, which is Skylander, the wide receiver room's got to show me something. This is the week where Justin Jefferson has to show up for Andy. If Justin Jefferson shows up, he somehow, I think it's going to be impossible for him to get over 20 points. I think that's asking too much. The 20 points will maybe come from Brock Bowers. Let's see what Brock Bowers has done over the past few weeks. Brock Bowers, 20 points, 11 points. I know he had an injury at some point. Did he have an injury? Yeah, he did early in the season. Maybe Brock Bowers can get you 15 points against the Eagles. Where are those big performances going to come from? Is it going to be Kyren Williams? I could think of 3 players for Eric on his side that could easily score him 20 points. For Andy, it's Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has one of those 35-point games, which is very possible against the Raiders, but that's what Andy's going to need. Andy's going to need these one-sided performances, a bloated performance in order to beat Ewok Rape, in order to be ahead maybe 15, 18 points at the time of the Monday night game when Achane goes against the Steelers. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Ewok Rape will score somewhere in the neighborhood of 110, somewhere around there, and Andy will score somewhere in the 90s. I don't think Andy's going to make it to triple digits. I don't know what's going to happen with Chris Rodriguez. I know it's against the Giants, but the Commanders, they'll throw out Rodriguez. They'll throw out Bill. What's the other guy's name? He's very consistent. Man, the Commanders really took a hit when Austin Eckler got hurt. Austin Eckler was the security blanket after Zach Ertz. After Zach Ertz got hurt, of course, but he was the security blanket, and he was the best of all of these little gadget players. Chris Rodriguez, how much faith do you have in him? I see Ewok Rape winning this by over 15 points. That's what I said. I said what I said, okay? So give me Colt of Jolt over Joelicus Maximus and Ewok Rape over Guylander. Moving on to the second round. Go fuck yourselves.